Okay. I would like to call to order what I think is the 28th public meeting of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission on September 19th. We do this because after we have a forum, we as a commission operate under the open meeting law, which means that no more than two of us can get together and talk about anything unless we are in a formal public meeting, which this now is. So that means we couldn't sit around and talk about what we had heard as a group unless we convened to do it. And sometimes it turns out that there are action steps that we want to take right after a forum. So this may not last very long, or it may last for a while, but since we can't have a meeting spontaneously, we've always planned it in advance to do this. First of all, Assistant Secretary Ron Marlowe, thank you very much to you and all your troops. Reggie and Georgianne, I'm not sure she's still here. Those were great panels, really. Lots of times panels are just sort of random and the speakers haven't coordinated and it's not very useful, but these were really targeted, really smart, really helpful stuff, and I really appreciated it very much, so thank you. And thank you for coming all the way up from the boondocks of Maryland or wherever it was to visit us. Glad you came to see a good city. Yeah, doing it there. Those are the boondocks I was talking about. That was really, really helpful stuff. I just will reiterate that the primary purpose here is to help us figure out what we can do in our licensing process to implement the intent of the law and of our policy. We can answer questions to some extent. We've got some. We'll try to answer a few more, but this was more about us learning what we can do in the licensing process, and I hope people will follow up. Somebody gave me a card saying he had could describe distinctions between the various licensing processes. I hope people will send us stuff that we can use and consider as we go on in the licensing process. I think we were given, well, let me start out actually just asking the commissioners, were there things that you wanted to follow up on, things you were particularly struck by, anything that we either needed to talk about or that you wanted to talk about? Anybody?
I was struck by a number of things, Mr. Chairman, but one of the things that I was struck by was right at the end, Ms. Cleghorn's suggestion, stronger than a suggestion, that...
she was sort of a shrinking violet, wasn't she?
That the effectiveness of an institution's commitment to this process is reflected by how high up in the corporate hierarchy the person responsible for it is. And it seems to me that's a very interesting and easily identifiable mark of commitment to the process. And it seems to me that also is something that we can think about internally as we put together our own organizational structure with respect not only to perhaps this topic, but to some of the other topics that we've heard interesting presentations about during the different forums we've attended. So I thought that was a particularly helpful mark of institutional commitment to this particular goal.
Yeah, I agree. Anybody else?
No, I just wanted to say that I found the whole morning to be kind of exhilarating. Spending a lot of time, my whole career, in public safety, being with an organization that we could never crack the 5% to have more women. So I feel like I've been engaged in these issues for a long, long time. As a commissioner with law enforcement accreditation and international group, the public safety, the chiefs and sheriffs that came before us, the ones that came before my commission knew that I'd be asking about how do you represent your communities, where's your plan? Some of them don't like me very much, actually, because they didn't see the need to look like their communities, to be very good policing agencies. So I think that we will be paying attention to this. Coming to take this position, we talk about a welcoming environment. I had to make a decision. Did I want to move back to Massachusetts full-time and take a position like this? But I was frankly, very impressed interviewing with the Attorney General and her commitment to gaming and going through this process properly. I didn't feel like a token woman. I didn't feel like that the Commonwealth, I felt like the Commonwealth took these issues seriously, and we're really looking for a commission to take these issues seriously. So as a commission, I think our commission has to be representative, and the folks that we send out there to be our representatives have to understand what the values are. So just a lot of good information today, so I just want to thank everybody for providing that information.
Yeah, I'd like to echo a lot of that. In between the sessions, I had a couple of people come in and ask a couple of questions, and they were along the topics of communication and connection. How do I find out about opportunities? Where do I go to find these out? And well, I kept thinking about our website and our transcripts and our minutes. I wanted to also dovetail that to the notion of a very high-level person that is a point person, a chief a diversity officer, and I want to pick up on the insightful comment about that person needs to be at the table, at the strategy table, and I would pose that this is the strategy table, and while we are looking at an organization and a table of organization, I think it's incumbent upon us to ask ourselves, how we can structure, how we can begin to structure and formalize that and make that commitment that I think is paramount.
I had the same thing. I came away, among other things, with two thoughts that are, one is it's probably getting pretty close to time for us to hire somebody who's really going to focus on the workforce development stuff. Commissioner Stebbins has been taking the lead on that, but the Commissioner's got other things to do, and that might be the same person that, takes the diversity hat, and A, and B, several people also talked to me about, and I think the idea we might want to think about either having the operators contribute to one, or we start one where there's a website that has all the supplier opportunities, all the hiring opportunities, some central place. Because the whole thing about building access to these opportunities is really central, and trying to figure out how to do that is important.
I just wanted to, I echo the comments of my colleagues. Coming to this meeting today, I think reminds me once again why, as Commissioner Cameron pointed out, her interest in serving on the commission, my interest in serving on the commission is that the introduction of expanded gaming in Massachusetts, we need to continue to focus on this as an economic development opportunity for the Commonwealth, job opportunities for the Commonwealth, as well as the revenue that we hope comes through the door. This meeting again crystallized several perspectives for me, but as we go through the licensing and the application process, I think we're being introduced to these education forums that we've done to the number of stakeholders already present here in Massachusetts who can help us meet the objectives of the gaming law. The statute language of what is an applicant going to do to expand opportunities for small business and the other statute language. I'm now looking past somebody just checking the box. I think any potential operator out there, and I know several were in attendance here this morning, I think to any of you who are watching this streaming or are going to read it in the minutes, you missed out on an opportunity to facilitate and begin to build some relationships that will bolster your application. I think there's enough evidence for us now to look at the stakeholders in the room and realize that an applicant who comes before us and says, yes, I commit myself to small business development, without more teeth than that, I think they fail to recognize that, and it's to their own detriment. There are some things with making opportunities available for Massachusetts residents who are looking for jobs, looking for new career opportunities, as well as the small business component that this meeting crystallized for me, that there are a lot of stakeholders out there who could be strong potential partners for potential applicants, and they missed an opportunity if they weren't here today.
Yeah, I agree. There were a few questions. I have one, and I don't know, Janice, were there others that we were, okay. One of the problems with getting up and shooting your mouth off about diversity and inclusion is people are invited to hold you accountable for whether you are diverse and inclusive or not. And one of our people in the audience wrote, given the commission is charged with ensuring diversity of its casino licensees, however, so far, the commission itself is not fully reflective of diversity. How can the commission properly make demands of others when it's non-compliant itself? We can't do much about ourselves because we were appointed by the governor, the attorney general, and the treasurer, but we have a clear responsibility and commitment to doing within our own workforce and our own suppliers what we are talking to the vendors about doing. And you know, we talk about it constantly. It's very much a part of our employee search priorities. We haven't had much in the way of vendor relationships, but we're starting to. And we expect to be held accountable, and we expect to, you know, vote with our feet. We expect to demonstrate to people that we are practicing what we will be preaching. The second question this person said is, what provisions have been made for diversity in casino equity ownership? It's an interesting question. We have also talked about this at our public meetings. And I don't think we've really figured out very much, other than we have made a change in the background checks that does detailed background on all of the senior people associated with any proposal. That means their financing sources, their development partners, and so forth. And we are asking for race, gender, and ethnicity of those people. You know, your board of directors, your senior management, your equity partners. How that exactly figures into our hierarchy into our decision-making process, I don't think we've figured out yet. But you know, if people are listening, I think they're understanding that, you know, we think that this is an important value, and it's not just in hiring, you know, African American people to change the bedrooms. It's, you know, it's the whole organization's top to bottom. And as other people said, you know, the commitment starts at the top. If the commitment isn't reflected at the top, then you're pretty sure it's not going to be very effective throughout the organization. So it's something that we're talking about, we're thinking about. You know, again, we're looking for advice on how we can implement this law. And if people out there have ideas on how we can address these kinds of issues within the law and policy, please tell us. That's what we're looking for.
I would only point out perhaps the obvious, that we have some diversity in the commission.
Yes, right.
if my accent is not a giveaway at times, or you know, or Commissioner Cameron's, but like a comment that was made before, there's always room to grow and always opportunity to make it better. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you addressed a lot of that.
Anything else, anybody? I just want a couple of comments that were really interesting, useful. One, certainly the whole idea about thinking very self-consciously about the preparation, what I think Fred called what are the support, not the wraparound services or whatever it was. You know, it's not just a matter of taking people that already are equipped to get into a community college, but you know, training, retraining, retention rates. You know, there's a whole world of opportunity there for us to focus on, and if we're not reminded of it, it's the kind of thing we can miss. I loved somebody. What did it say? This is an inoculation from stupidity and self-destruction. I don't know if we can. That's a pretty high standard for us to hold ourselves to, but getting rid of all stupidity and self-destruction is pretty tough. But we will do our best. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Just two other comments, and you know, it's nice to go to a meeting where people don't say wow, we really don't envy your job. It was nice to hear Ron say, you know, this is a great opportunity, and we wish you the best of luck. So that was nice to hear. And I'm sure our Director of Communications would be angry if we didn't, you know, remind people you can follow us on, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. That's not the message, I don't know. To stay on top of our activities. You know, we do focus on being transparent, and all of our weekly public meetings, you can sit at your desk and watch it stream live, but stay on top of our activities and you know, use our comments line when, you know, you want to weigh in.
Thanks, Commissioner. There were a few other questions that we just got. Do you want to go ahead and take them?
I have one here that says, will the developer be required to contribute a small percentage of the project cost / opportunity to training programs for the underserved, underskilled, and disenfranchised? If I can speak to that, it's just, we will be looking, you know, in comparing potential companies for a license, we will be looking at all the things that they say they will do and what they have done in the past. That was a good point mentioned earlier. So I don't think they'll be required you know, but coming forth with ideas. How are you going to train? How are you going to be diverse? What projects will you get involved with the community? That is, we had an operator, or actually someone that was involved in tourism from Indiana, I believe, who was excellent in talking to us about make sure that they get involved in the community. You almost have to force that to happen. They won't necessarily do so much on their own. And he gave us some examples of how to do that, how to identify those who are doing better than others, and using the small businesses in the area. So we're getting some ideas on those kinds of things, what we should be looking for. So if anyone else has anything else to add to that.
No. I have a question that says, will there be a policy with respect to casino owners on supplier diversity in their supplier base? And the answer is yes. The law requires us to take into the application, I should say, first of all, to show the plans and commitment of the casino owner and operator to minority business enterprises, women business enterprises, and veterans business enterprises in a variety of circumstances, and then requires us, in awarding a license, to require that those plans be fulfilled, and also prohibits us from issuing a license if we're not satisfied with how intensive those plans are. So there's a great opportunity for these policies to be put into practice. And in addition to the statute, no doubt we'll be issuing regulations that detail with more particularity the criteria we're looking for.
I have a question that's similar. It's about requiring of operators minority equity partners, or also requiring that they contract with minority-owned firms at every single level. They say here, starting at the project manager. And in addition to what Commissioner McHugh was talking about, I believe that as we let out the RFAs, the request for responses, especially for these phase 2, that we consider making very clear that the effective supplier diversity programs and the commitment to these kinds of issues that we were talking about are going to be evaluated and scored on to the benefit of getting ultimately a license or not. I think we only are starting to undertake this phase 2 process, but there are ways in which we could require a certain threshold, but there are also ways in which we could reward, if you will, by recognizing somebody's commitment to these kinds of issues by way of the competition that will exist.
I'm not exactly sure I understand this question, but it says a concern about being a young business versus the requirements that for bid presentations normally require public project records. How can we best present ourselves with over 25 years experience with little to no public record as an MBE? I think this question is referring to public procurements, and I want to reinforce what Ron and Reggie said, that the vast majority of the procurements and hiring that will be done by the private companies. What we do is license people to build up to 3 casinos and up to 1 slots parlor in various locations in Massachusetts. Once they get the license, they will do the procurement of the vendors, and they will do the construction, and they will do the hiring. So you're not part of it. It will not be part of a public bidding process, except for the small amount of work that we ourselves will do for our own commission. But that's an important distinction. It will not be a public bidding process. We may do something, as you've heard. We may bring some of the public bidding requirements into our own processes, and we certainly may do things like making sure that advertisements are sufficiently broad and et cetera. But you will not be having to prove to a public agency that you've had public sector experience to do this kind of work, the vast majority of it. I think we're done. Anything else?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
My question has to do with right now, where the commission is at right now, and whether in fact there are any opportunities for minority-owned businesses to get involved with the development of your regulations, development of any policies that you're currently thinking about in preparation for the selection of vendors, supply, whatever they're called, that are going to be running the casino.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. I mean, we are doing some hiring, and we are doing some procurement of vendor relations. We've talked to several people here who have kinds of services that we might be using, placement services, IT, security. We are hiring, and all of those are public procurements, and they're all competitively bid. They're all published on Compass and on our own website. And you are encouraged to pitch us as aggressively as you possibly can. It's all totally out there. And we think that we are practicing what we're preaching. So yeah, there are opportunities right now. And watch for the employment opportunities. We're hiring right now. I think we have like seven positions, from executive assistants to executive directors, where we are aggressively recruiting and soliciting candidates.
But there's another element to that question, or another dimension, let me say, to that question, which is what we understand of some operators that, again, what Mr. Chairman was talking about, these are private operators. They are forming their teams. They are hiring some architects. Those architects may be hiring some, let's say, consultants who may or may not be minority or women business enterprises. And I believe there's a role of this commission to try to connect, eventually engage with these operators. We've debated a little bit as to when exactly to do that, because we have a big process in terms of letting out these licenses. And frankly, some of them, from what we read in the media, they have not technically become applicants by virtue of submitting their non-refundable fee to the commission. It's only been 3 entities that have done that. So we have a couple of different parallel tracks, if you will, but I believe there's a case to be made that this commission should be a little bit more proactive in at least disseminating the information of the private operators, whether they volunteer it or whether we just know about it, to your point.
That's actually a good point. We could put up on our website, we could put up people who are applicants now and points of contact for hiring and vendor relationship. I think that's a great idea. Let's. Elaine, did you hear that idea? I think that's a really good idea. Okay, well, we'll take one question because you got your hand up, but we don't want to really get into the business of an open forum. But go ahead.
On that same subject,
Yeah, we don't really have relationships with those. So, I mean, all you have to do is Google it. You can find it, you know. But we don't have relationships with those fat folks. We don't have contact names, and I don't know that we want to get into the business of trying to get contact relationships with people that are just being, you know, talked about in the media. The becoming an applicant, which means you file a certificate of intent to become an applicant and you give us your 400 grand, that's a pretty powerful break point that now creates a relationship with us and that company. And I think that's probably the right discriminator for us to stick with. That's my sense. Okay, I think we're done for the morning. Once again, thank you all very much. Motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye.